It really ain't the place nor time to reel off rhyming diction. But yet we'll write a final rhyme while waiting crucifixion. For we bequeath a parting tip of sound advice for such men who come across in transport ships to polish off the Dutchmen. If you encounter any Boers, you really must not loot 'em. And if you wish to leave these shores, for pity's sake, don't shoot 'em. Let's toss a bumper down our throat before we pass to heaven, and toast the trim-set petticoat we leave behind in Devon.
Stop here and get out.
Okay.
I'm going to park here somewhere. But yeah.
Is this where
you can see that's a very old house with the wooden frame windows, and this is where this most recent Australian film was filmed, and that door leads into a passageway, and we converted that into Colonel Hall's office,
right.
where they had a few guys coming in, and where he was telling them that they were going to be charged with in the court martial, and I actually lent them a picture of Queen Victoria, stuff like that, so she wasn't around anymore, but anyway,
yeah.
So they converted that into what became Captain's office. So we're going to go out here. I will show you where, I just want to see this. So
is this where you said Beyers was playing the piano?
No, he was playing the piano down here. We're going down there now. This is just where he spent the night.
He spent the night, and one of the women that was living here was busy stitching an Australian flag, and she needed somewhere to hide it, so she hid it under the pillow, and Commandant Beyers slept on top of the pillow. Underneath was tucked the primitive flag that who was the woman that was making the flag?
Olivia Bristow.
Bristow.
She was stitching a flag.
Right.
The Union Jack pot. When her husband came in and told her that Beyers was spending the night with him, and she decided not to embarrass her good friend.
And it was a primitive Australian flag, we think.
Yes, well it is. I still believe that was the Australian flag.
Right.
I mean, what else would have that big dark background?
The trees here.
This here was a coach.
Ah, yeah.
Depot. You see how the roof went right up there.
Yeah.
Right up there. Now that is my grandmother was a Zederberg.
Right.
And it was her brother that had the coach line, or one of her brothers. So the coach would arrive, and they'd go in here, and the driver might have slept inside if he was lucky, and maybe the assistant driver would sleep on the roof, and the rest would sleep in the house.
Right.
Or rather, the passengers would sleep in the house, because this was known as Sweetwater's Hotel.
Ah.
So if you come around here, I had little magnetic stickers on here telling the story I just told you.
Yeah.
But I took them down because they were faded and they up to the shop, and I haven't had time to sort them out.
Look at the undergrowth here.
Also a very old building now.
Hello.
These windows, Carl's grandfather replaced them because they were wooden, and a lot of them were in a bad state. And they were taken out and numbered, and they were hung up in a shed down below there, so that if ever there's a restoration, which I doubt will happen, that those windows should be put back in their original places. So his staff is using this now. This one here. It was this one here. And that's one of those millipedes.
Yeah.
This one here was the canteen.
Ah.
And I had a sign up there saying canteen, and I also said payment in gold accepted, because there was a great deal of alluvial gold down in this valley, down below where we've just come from.
Ah.
All those little rivers had very low quantities of alluvial gold. And Carl's father told me that that his brother still had the little scale that they measured the gold in.
Yeah, right.
And when I asked his brother, he said, "No, man, my other brother's got it." You know, that sort of thing. So I never knew what it was.
What, are they lights up there?
No, those were all beams right across to hold the walls together.
Ah, okay.
And then around the corner here, we have Captain Taylor's office.
Oh, wow.
And I believe that this is where that order was given, which was taken as the norm.
Captain Taylor's office, where perhaps the rule was. Oh, yeah, look at them all. Must be the weather, is it?
It is the weather. The ground is softer and they're all around. So if you want to stand up there, I will take a photo.
Oh, fantastic. Who do you think was present at that meeting?
Well, certainly, Robertson was present. Robertson was present, but he didn't go with that first group those 5 or 6 guys. I think I've got the list of that in my book. I can't remember them all.
Right.
I seem to think Muircherton might have been one of them. I'm not too sure. I don't know if Silk was. We can have a look in my book. I've got those names. I can't remember all those things.
Right.
So, but there were a couple of them here. And the film that they did here, they also had a few horses around here, and a few men standing next to the horses, because obviously from here, when they got the order to proceed to Valdezia, they didn't have to go back to the fort to get their horses. They obviously left from here. So
the command was that those men that were travelling in the wagon, and one of them was sick with the black fever or dysentery,
Blackwater,
that they were to be executed or apprehended.
Well, Captain Taylor said, make it look like a fight.
Oh, I see.
Ignore white flags.
Oh.
Ignore ignore white flags. Take no prisoners and make it look like a fight.
Right.
That's exactly what he said. From here.
I'll give you an idea of the size of these guys.
They're enormous, aren't they?
Look at that. That's my finger.
Unreal. They exude a sort of an oil onto your fingers, which is not very good smelling.
Yeah. Surprised the locals
I don't know whether there's too many animals or birds that eat those things.
And look, that's where they would have loaded the hay in, did they?
Yes. Yes, that would have been a storage place.
Is there anything inside anymore?
No.
Okay.
No, the ceilings are down and everything. So down here is where Beyers was playing the piano.
Right. These guys work here, do they?
Yeah, they all staff.
Farm workers. Hello, hello.
Morning.
Very green here.
So, okay, now we're out of sight of where the fort is, but it's just up the road here. You'll see when you drive back onto the road. So this was the reception of the hotel. The reception, that was the piano room. And that information I got from Pug himself, because he said that piano was here when they were still at school.
Sure.
Piano, and then down there was the dining room. So Beyers was playing the piano in this room. It's a pity I don't have that name up there that I said was the piano room.
Yeah.
That was the dining room, and this was the reception room. He was playing the piano. He was obviously waiting for something to happen, because he knew that if the water was cut off at the fort, and none of the officers were there, because they were already all in Petersburg, awaiting their or I don't know what procedure the court of inquiry had. I don't believe that any of them were. They might have been called in to testify or to witness, whatever, I don't know. We don't have that record, but I don't have that record. But there were no officers here of any stature. But those 16 guys who signed that letter to Colonel Hall asking him to respond, they didn't know whether those fellows who were sitting in Petersburg awaiting the court-martial, they didn't know whether they would be released and that they would come back. Because if they came back, they could well take it out, because there were Hancock and Morant, and that caliber of person was there. Excuse the pun. So these fellows at the fort did not know what the situation was, and they had no communication at that stage. So they could have been rather uncomfortable not knowing what was happening in Petersburg and how safe they were. And it was during that period that I believe that those two guys who were here with me the other day, Midgley, who said that I didn't include their great-grandfather, I believe it could have been him, because he had rank at that stage. I think he was a lieutenant, I'm not too sure. But he had rank, and he actually got the DSO, by the way, when he got back. He was awarded the DSO. Not for this incident. But at some stage, while these guys were sitting around, and again, don't look at the bush and say, where were they sitting? Were they sitting in the bush? It wasn't here at that stage. Some of these silver oaks might have been here.
Yeah.
But they were sitting listening to their commander, their General Beyers. Acting general he was at that stage. They didn't know, let me put it this way. They were sitting listening to him playing the piano. He had given an order for the water to be cut. He was waiting for response from Petersburg, from Colonel Hall's office. So there was a lot in the air right there. And at some stage, one of them said, here are some blacks approaching with blankets over their heads. Now, we don't know exactly whether they were coming down here or wherever they were coming. But apparently, there was a little wall here. According to Pum, he said there was a little wall here that started high and then came down into a sort of a curve and ended here with a pillar. And he says he and one of his schoolboy friends was here one day. And one of them said, hey, here's something in this wall here. And they scratched with a penknife. He says his dad was busy with a horse here doing something. And he said they pulled out a bullet head.
Right.
From this wall. And they looked and looked and looked. They found another bullet hole here. So somebody was shooting from up there. I'm not saying it was those guys. It might have been Pug himself one day testing out a rifle. But anyway, that was a little thing of significance. Right. So anyway, these guys said, no, those are not soldiers. They're not blacks.
They're not Africans.
No. They're not Africans. Thank you.
No.
They're not Africans. So as he grabbed his rifle and jumped up, those guys dropped their blankets and they came storming. I'm pointing this way. They came storming upon here. Beyers and I think that Nadir was with him. Sure. They escaped. Now, I've never been in there. They've never been able to open that door for me. Yeah. I've never been in there to see whether there's a window. I'm sure there is a window. If you go to the other side, you can see the window. But there might have even been a door through from the piano room through to the dining room. That we don't know. Yeah. But Beyers and Nadir and a couple of others got onto their horses and took off. In fact, I think they all did. They all left from here. And from here, Beyers knew that there was going to be follow-up action. So they went to this place called Vliegenspan, which is our last stop.
Right.
And they waited there for that column to come through with a whole lot of other units like the Kitchener's Fighting Scouts, and I think there was a light horse group as well, the Petersburg Light Horse, because it was around about that time that the name Bushveldt Carbineers was removed, and these guys who were still around here were assigned to the Petersburg Light Horse.
Sure.
So those of you who are medal collectors, if you've got a medal that was the Bushveldt Carbineers only, awarded to somebody, a medal that says Bushveldt Carbineers, that is worth 3 times more than one that was awarded to Bushveldt Carbineers and Light Horse.
Wow.
So that is an interesting thing from the collector's point of view of medals, because there were fewer struck with Bushveldt Carbineers I don't know of. I know of 2 people who've got a medal, and I've got Petersburg Light Horse and Bushveldt Carbineers. I've got 2 of those. But so that was it was a significant part of the Bushveldt Carbineers in this area, in that they didn't know where their command structure was. Captain Taylor wasn't here either. He was also in Petersburg. They might have had this fellow Midgley, and maybe it was his idea. In fact, those 2 guys were standing over here, and one of them said, hell, I hope that wasn't great grandfather's idea to use a black tradition and to get us have a surprise attack on you.
Right.
So that's about it for here.
Will we see the site where the fort was?
Yes.
Okay.
Not the actual ground, but I'm going to take you to the place called Fort Edward, and I have to point out, because as I say, there was a bulldozer in there some years ago.
Yeah.
That pushed
Fort Edward.
Far away. And when we go in there with a metal detector, because of all the rusty wire and bits and pieces, the metal detector goes crazy.
That's where the
So we haven't been.
locals live for this. Not.
It was quite a complex in those days, as you can see. Sweetwater Hotel. It was quite a hub. And another point of interest is that this house was never burnt down, and neither was my great-grandparents' house, which was down the road.
Yeah.
Those are the only 2 houses. And that one incident where Morant and Whitten was there, and a couple of others went down to almost to the Kruger Park of today, and they went and captured Kelly, who was with the Soutpansberg Commando. He was a Veldkornet at that stage. Kelly and his wife and a couple of his other more senior officers with their wives. They'd gone down to, some people say they were on their way to Mozambique. They were wanting to get out of the way of the war. That's also possible. But they were taken at night, or in the early hours of the morning, by Morant, Whitten and a whole lot of other guys. They were literally caught with their pants down. They did not expect to be attacked, and they were loaded onto the wagon, and they came back. It took them a couple of days to get back. And Whitten writes that though he couldn't speak Dutch, and the one Kelly daughter, they were probably very good looking girls. The one Kelly daughter, or neither of the Kelly daughters could speak English. They managed to get quite friendly with each other. And when they arrived here, the girls said they want their cases off the wagon, and he said, well, where are you going? And they said they're going to get the house ready, and he didn't have the heart to tell them their house had been burnt down. Whitten mentions that. I give it in the book. I also give Whitten credit for after the shooting of Visser, where he says, I can't quote him verbatim, but basically he says, don't judge us if you weren't there as well. You know, don't judge us by for the things we did if you didn't know. Allergic to bees.
Okay.
And I can't point out exactly the room that he was in, but it was one of those rooms.
This is a house
So
where
I'm going to stand here.
he was a commandant.
He was a general. General Beyers.
Of Beyers.
Yeah. Assistant, his proper title was Assistant General Beyers. And he was in charge of the commandos in the far north.
General Beyers, a Boer commando leader. Got to be careful of bees, but you can see how overgrown it is here. And this is the house they used for filming, Charles was telling us. But, yeah, this is the house that Beyers slept in, and the woman was making a Australian flag and had to keep quiet about it. And he slept without knowing it on top of an Australian flag.